All right, looks like I'm live. I'm live again on YouTube. Yep. Chilly today, +3 Celsius. Good morning. Today I'm going to continue on with reading of, it's just a little lower for the dog there. I like to get the dog in the shot. It's funny how every time I go live, there's always one guy or girl that comes on and goes off right away. That's okay. I'm going to carry on today for an hour, live from my living room. I like to read, so I'm going to carry on reading Sammy the Bull's Underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, story of life in the Mafia by Peter Moss. So I'm on chapter 3 here. You can't live your whole life on your own. Sooner or later, you're going to get in real trouble or get killed. Smoking a little what they call farm gas shortcuts. They're nice. They're infused, super THC. In 1931, warring factions of the Italian underworld, primarily Sicilian and Neapolitan, came together to form Cosa Nostra. This union enabled it to completely dominate organized crime, both ethnic and homegrown American, throughout the country during the next decade. By the end of World War II, Cosa Nostra consisted of 24 crime families from coast to coast, each with an identical organizational structure. It flourished in cosmopolitan New York City as well as Cowtown, Kansas City. 2 resort cities were ordained to be open to the activities of any family, Las Vegas and Miami. Policy was determined and interfamily disputes settled by a national commission composed of 11 of the most powerful bosses. Then in 1957, when Sammy was 12 years old, Cosa Nostra was racked by a series of internal convulsions after Lucky Luciano, one of its original architects, had been deported to Italy. Vito Genovese sought control of his family by attempting to assassinate the acting family boss, Frank Costello. Costello decided to step down, and the Luciano family became the Genovese family. Still, Genovese feared retaliation from another trigger-happy family boss and Costello ally, Albert Anastasia, the most notorious killer in Cosa Nostra history. So he conspired with a wily Anastasia underling, Carlo Gambino, to do away with the Mad Hatter, as Anastasia was called. On October 25th, 1957, Anastasia was relaxing under a pile of hot towels in a Manhattan barber shop when two gunmen walked in and gunned him down. The Anastasia family was now the Gambino family. Even more unsettling was the discovery that while Anastasia was still alive, membership in his families were being secretly sold for $50,000 each. To deal with all of this, a national conclave of Cosa Nostra leadership was scheduled for November 14th, 1957, in the small upstate New York village of Appalachian, where a captain in the Buffalo family lived. The idea was that a meeting in such an out of the way rural setting would go unnoticed. Just the opposite happened. An alert New York State troopers spotted an unusual number of black limousines full of silk-suited strangers converging on the residence. Roadblocks were set up, and soon the nation's top mobsters were scampering through the woods, trying to avoid detection. Many of them were arrested and convicted on charges of obstructing justice by refusing to explain their presence in the Appalachian. Well, it's a free country after all. These convictions were reversed on the ground that merely meeting as they had was not by itself a crime. However, they effectively ended any more national Cosa Nostra Commission get-togethers. If families around the country had to communicate with one another, emissaries were dispatched. Only in New York City, where 5 families uniquely rubbed shoulders, did the commission system continue to function. But Vito Genovese and Carlo Gambino were officially recognized as family bosses, and to regain some measure of stability because of the sale of memberships, the membership books of the New York families were closed. "11 years later, in 1968, when Sammy the Bull had his meeting with Shorty Spiro, the books remained closed, which was why Spiro was an associate rather than a made member of the Colombo family. It was really a technicality. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that Shorty pulled a lot of weight in the family. Sammy said Shorty was a veteran. It was all around on the streets about the books being closed, but when they opened, Shorty would be made right away. Shorty was an ex-pug, but he'd gotten to be a polished guy. Nice clothes, nice jewelry, nothing overdone. Who knew how to talk without beating around the bush. When we met, he got right to the point. His message wasn't anything I hadn't heard before. Eventually, I'd have to hook up with the right people. But the way he put it was different. "I've had my eye on you," he says. "Why not come with me? You're a tough guy, but you can't keep doing things your own way. You can't live your whole life on your own. Sooner or later, you're going to get in real trouble or get killed. I'll give you a different relationship where you can be a somebody." I'll never stab you in the back. I'll never bullshit you. I'll never ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself. Those were the words that was the pledge I wanted to hear. Like I've said, I'm obsessed with people being upfront with me. Once Sammy had agreed to go on the record with Shorty to be associated officially with the Colombo family, he was taken to meet Shorty's captain, Carmine Persico. Junior Persico was called Carmine or Junior to his face, and behind his back, a name he detested, the Snake, because of the suddenness with which he would strike when provoked. It was an honor for me to meet him, Sammy said. He was a living legend, not just in Bensonhurst, but all over. He shook things about. Uh, he shook my hand and said, "I'm really happy about this. I heard a lot of good things about you." I still have high regard for him. When I look back, he was one of the few mob guys who never went around scheming, who was always on the up and up. Word of Sammy's recruitment was passed on to the family boss, Joe Colombo, and to the other New York families as required by Cosa Nostra rules. Shorty told Sammy that the boss himself had signaled his special pleasure at the news. Sammy had already had an encounter with Colombo. I beat up both his sons one time in a movie house. We had this argument, and I got in a fight with Joseph Jr., who was younger than me, and I broke his ass. He went and got his bigger brother, Anthony, who comes, and it's the same result. I'll never forget it. Joe Colombo sent for me. He called me down. He looks at me and says, "You beat up both my sons. You must be pretty tough. Did you know they were my sons?" I said, "No, not at the time. They were just two young guys at the movie house," he says. "Anthony, you almost knocked him out. You could have kicked his face in. How come you didn't do that?" I said, "Why would I want to do that? It was just a fight. It was nothing personal," he says. "Now you know they're my sons, right?" And I said, "Absolutely." He says, "You must be good with your hands because I know my sons are pretty tough. And that's good how you conducted yourself. When you got a guy down, know when to let him up. Goodbye." So I like this, Joe Colombo. That was another reason I was glad to be with the family. I never got a bad decision from him. I'd be with Shorty, and Shorty would be talking to him, maybe giving him a message from Junior. I would stay across the street or out of the way, and a couple of times he would say, "Sammy, how come you didn't come over and say hello?" I said, "I didn't know if it was my place." "It's always your place to say hello," he told me. That's the kind of guy he was. The benefits of being connected became quickly apparent. So now I'm in Shorty's crew, and my new friends are this Frankie, Ralphie Ranja, Joe Colaci, Lenny the Mole, who also was from the Rampers. Lenny would only come out during the days when he had to, and Tommy Spiro, Shorty's nephew. And right around then, me and Tommy and Lenny stick up this clothing store at closing time. I go in first. I don't have a mask. I don't want to alert the guy. I put a gun in his face, and Tommy and Lenny come in. We took all the cash and carried a lot of clothes out the back way where we had the van parked. But the guy picks me out of a mug book. It looks bad. It's a heavy felony, grand larceny, forcible theft with a deadly weapon. But it turns out the guy, the owner of the store, is a friend of a made guy in Sam the plumber's family, the Cavalcante family, over in Jersey. Shorty, Shorty, whoever gets in touch with him, and he talks to the owner. It was all set up. The next time I was in court, the owner walks in and goes in front of the judge and says, "Your Honor, I picked the defendant out from his picture, but now that I see him in person, that's not him." And the case is thrown out. I didn't have to make restitution or anything. The guy was covered by insurance, so he's got it going both ways. He gets his losses back, and he's done us a favor too. For sure, he doesn't have to worry about no more robberies. The same kind of thing happened in a bank robbery. They looked like big money, and Shorty was all for it. He got a piece of everything was we scored. The bank was on a corner, and Tommy Spiro had a guy on the inside. The bank had a side door on the street, and then there was a little foyer and another door to the bank itself. This was the route the armored car people used to pick up money from the bank. Tommy said that all this particular branch, they only used one guard to bring out the money bags. Tommy's inside guy would leave the side door on the street open so I could slip into the foyer and get the guard when he comes out of the bank. It sounded good. Tommy is at the corner by the bank to get the signal from his guy. Frankie is at another corner to cover us. Lenny's driving to the getaway car. The guy in the bank must have gotten or given Tommy the nod because Tommy nods to me. Sure enough, the side street door is open and I go in. Perfect. Nobody walking outside can see me. I get my gun out and I set myself. The inside door to the bank opens up, and lo and behold, there ain't one guard. There are four of them. I'm in shock. Three of the guards are holding money bags, and the fourth has got his hand on his gun. I pointed my gun at him and yelled, "Hit the floor!" And they do. I guess they're in shock too. I got my gun in one hand and I grabbed two of the bags with the other, and now I don't know what the hell to do. I back out the door or through the street door. It's a solid door, no windows. I slam it shut just as the guards are coming at me, pulling out their guns. I yell to my guys that there are a gang of guards in there. I get my foot against the door to jam it. I don't know what the fuck else to do. I feel the guards pushing against the door and I'm telling my guys to run. I see I see them running. They're yelling to me, "Come on, Sammy. Come on." I'm afraid to let the door go. I'm panicking. How far could I get? 10 feet? These guards will blow me away. By now, I've dropped the 2 bags. One of them opened up and some of the money comes out. Bills are actually flying all over the street. By now, a crowd has formed. People are looking, yelling, screaming. People are chasing the bills. Fuck it. I take a shot and let go of the door. Instead of running to the car where Lenny is, I run straight into the crowd, figuring the guards won't shoot with so many people around. I run through the crowd. As I'm running up the block, there's a guy standing there and he's yelling at me, Sammy, come on, come here. A zoom, he takes me into his house. I never knew who the fuck he was, but he knows me. This is at 86th Street and 21st Avenue. It's not far from my old neighborhood. He must know me from there. He tells he tells me he's going to look outside and I'm wondering if he went up to tip the cops. Finally, he comes back and says they were searching all over, but they're gone. He asks me if I want to leave my gun with him. I said thanks, but no thanks. I'm keeping it and walk out. Good luck, he said. I make it to Tommy Spiro's father's house. The other guys are there. Shorty comes down and finds out what happened. We all stay low at the house in the basement playing cards. Sure enough, we find out one of the guards made me, and the cops are looking to arrest me. They have an identification from the mug book and all that shit again. But guess what? The guard knows Carmine, Persico's cousin, and is a little crooked himself. The guard reaches out and says, for 10,000, he ain't going to say nothing. He won't testify. Great. The case will be over. I go down with Shorty to see Carmine. Carmine says, we'll do it. I said, Carmine, I don't have 5 cents. He says, I'll pay the 10,000. We'll squash this, but you're going to give me 3 points on the money. 3 points. Wow. So that would be like 300 a week, I guess. From being happy, now I'm totally disappointed. 3 points is 300 a week until the principal is paid off. You don't knock it down, Carmine. I say, I'm telling you, I'm broke. That's why I was robbing the bank. He gives me a look. Yeah, he says, but you don't get nothing for nothing in this life. Let me tell you how it works. I get money. I don't give you money. You give me money. That's number one. Number two, you have the opportunity to beat this case because of my strength and power. And number three, you're paying for the case with my money. You want to go through the door. I'm the guy who opens it. You don't seem to appreciate that. I sat and thought about it for a minute. I said to myself that he was right, basically. Streetwise, he was 100% right. In other words, I'm beating the case. I was looking at 7.5 to 15 years minimum. I'm borrowing the money to do it, so I got to pay the VIG. That's the life. I realized that he was training and scheduling me in the right direction, schooling me in the right direction, pardon me. The money didn't come down free of charge. You don't get nothing for nothing. First off, I'm scrambling to come up with the 300 a week so I don't look like or look bad with a Carmine. And then I go after the 10. I know how to do it with a gun, robbing and stealing left and right, jewelry stores. I took the It took me about 3 weeks. I just couldn't live with paying out that 300. Gradually, Sammy new status enabled him to begin moving out of his old routine of stick-ups and break-ins. I'm starting to become more of a true gangster and racketeer, getting into business, even if they're not still legitimate business. They're real on a business level. One of the first was this after hours club on 62nd Street and 17th Avenue. This guy, Billy Stagg, told me about it. Billy wasn't mobbed up, but he knew the ins and outs of running a club like that. He said the old man Rizzo, John Rizzo, who was a made guy in the Gambino family, and Matty Gambino, who wasn't made but pulled weight because he was related to Carlo Gambino, a nephew or something, were opening this club. Sammy, Billy said, they want me to manage it, but I'll need somebody on my side. They'll drive me crazy, especially Matty, who thinks he's a big fucking gangster. Why don't you get a piece of it? I've accumulated some money and I go down to see John and ask, could I have a piece of the joint? Now I know an old time wise guy like him ain't interested in being there every night. He just wants to collect his end. And when I go down, Louis Melito, who's close to him, happens to be there. And Louis says, Sammy will be great for the fucking club because Matty Gambino is a fucking waste. And the old man says, I love the idea. You're in. The joint was half done at that point. I'd done construction work on and off and I dived in to help finish it up. When you went in, there was a big front room to the right, and along the back was an L-shaped bar. There were cafe tables and chairs and a little dance floor and nice soft lighting behind the front room. There was another room with a big green felt table where we ran a poker game that we cut, and there's a small kitchen for sandwiches and stuff. Right from the start, the place was extremely successful. I put it on record with Shorty and the Colombo family that I got a piece of this club. I'm there like every minute, working like a dog with Billy, stopping fights, seeing everything is okay. I'm taking shifts with Billy's or in the card game. I'm taking shifts in the card game. I'm watching the door. If there's a gotta sneeze again. Oh my, it's always so dusty in here with these damn dogs. They shake off too. I'm taking shifts in the card game. I'm watching the door. If there's a fight, I'm in between guys. Hey, I'm 5'5". Some of these fucking guys fighting are 6'1", 6'2", and they don't give a fuck. It's an after hours club. They're drunk. We'd start around 10 or 11 at night. Go ahead and give me a like there. I'd appreciate that. People would come in and leave, and then others would come in, and we'd be filled to 7, 8 in the morning. Sometimes a poker game would go on for 2 or 3 days straight without stopping. The only problem was Matty Gambino. He'd strut in with his overcoat draped over his shoulders. He'd come in like a fucking Don Juan. He was a good looking kid. Have a couple of drinks, pick up a girl or two, and leave. Louis Melito would be around a lot. He's got nothing to do with the joint. He's just helping out, bringing in people to drink, play cards, whatever. Sammy, he'd say, how things going? And I'd tell him, I'm going good. He'd say, how come you and Billy got it all on your backs? Why don't Matty work? Louis, I said, you trying to break my balls? He's his only nephew, but he thinks he's Carlo Gambino himself. He comes in and he's gone. The truth is that I wish he would never come into the club at all. I gotta get better lighting in here. One night, me and Billy had finished doing the books, breaking down all the ends everybody got, and sure enough, this Matty Gambino comes in with a couple of guys and some broads. He walks over and he said, you know, Sammy, the bills don't seem right with the amount of liquor we're selling. He keeps on about this and that. It don't seem right, he says. What do you think is wrong? Wrong, I said. Do you think, geez, my nose is running in here. It's a little cold today. Do you think me and Billy are robbing you? If I were you, I wouldn't even answer that. He kind of draws back, stunned. I tell you what, I said, why don't you take that fucking greaseball coat off? Roll up your fucking sleeves, come in here and roll on the floor every time there's a fucking fight and work the fucking joint. As a matter of fact, you handle the cash, you divvy it up. Sammy, he says, don't you think you're out of order? Fuck you, out of order. You come in here, you want to abuse people, you're a fucking punk. You come in here with your friends and you don't do fucking work. Then you make a fucking accusation that something ain't right. Let's stop this conversation because it's going to get worse and worse, and I'll knock your fucking head in. You understand, you fucking greaseball? Just making another accusation about something that ain't right here with me or Billy. The next thing I know, there's a massive meeting. Shorty's there. John Rizzo says, Sammy, he went to his uncle. He went to Carlo. I'm sent down to talk to you about it. How could you do that? How could you say those things? That was a good part you guys bailed on. I thought that was super interesting. I like hearing Sammy get mad. How could I do it? He's lucky I didn't put my motherfucking foot up his ass. Who the fuck does this bum think he is? John, I give you the respect. I give Carlo the respect. But this fucking bum ain't going to come in on Carlo's name and reputation or your name and reputation and make accusations against me and Billy. I turned to Shorty. Shorty, I said, I'll declare it right now. I'll take my end back. I'm out of this club if that's what everybody wants. Old man Rizzo starts laughing. Take it easy, he says. Don't get so fucking hot. You're 100% right. Fuck this bum. He'll come in like a mouse from here on in. I know what happened. I heard it from Billy, but I had to come down about it and hear the story from you. Let me go back to Carlo and tell him how his nephew was acting. There's nothing to worry about. Don't pull out. Shorty, tell him to calm down. So I learned a big lesson. Number one, you got to stand up for yourself. Number two, I didn't stand a chance if I wasn't hooked up with the Colombo family. Shorty's getting a piece of my end. That's how it works. After the expenses of the club and paying off the cops, I'm taking out for myself about 2,000 a week cash, which is not bad in those days, and 500 of it goes up the ladder that I give to Shorty. I wait to see what Carlo Gambino is going to say about all of this. Shorty has already told me where Joe Colombo stands, and the answer is that when this Matty comes in again, he's gonna be a fucking mouse. As a matter of fact, every time he came in and with his girls, it was say hello to Sammy. The whole picture changed. I started on my own another little club on the side in Bensonhurst, which was making some money. It was just a club to gamble, poker, and Shorty got a piece of that. I started shylocking too, in a small way. Shylocking was considered your personal business, so what you got, you kept. At first, it was bullshit loans, not like later on when I became and had the reputation of a Shylock. I used to lend 96 for 126 for 12 weeks. It was hard work. It was easy to give the money out, but when you're dealing at that level, you're lending to the bottom of the barrel. A lot of these guys would wind up taking off, and you'd have to chase them down. But even so, during those years, there's only two people I had to hit to collect, physically hit. I mean, only two people. I think that says something about the reputation I had. There was this one guy. He didn't pay me for months and months. I kept having to chase him. I was yelling at him, and he told me to lower my voice. Lower my voice? You take my money. You give. Would you stop? They always eat the bark. Lower my voice. You take my money. You give me a tough time, and then you tell me to lower my voice. Boom. And there was this other guy who owed me money. My friends were teasing me in a bar one night about had made an appointment and didn't show. He made another appointment and still didn't show. They're breaking my chops that he wasn't never going to pay. He don't care. As they were joking and laughing and teasing, he comes into the bar with some heavyweights in the Colombo family. I grabbed him and took him aside. First off, I tell him he's going to pay. Second thing, when you make an appointment with me, you better show, or send somebody down to tell me you ain't going to show. Don't fucking make me just stand on a street corner waiting for you. He got a little nervy, Sammy. He says, I'm tied up. I'm not paying the loan. I'm with Joe Colombo and the Italian American Civil Rights League. I said, you're with what? The Italian American League, and you ain't paying. Who the fuck do you think I'm with? the Jewish Defense League. I give him a tremendous beating right there. And then this other guy who's going to be made, remember, all them years the books were closed and nobody got made, comes out of the bar and says, "What are you doing, Sammy?" He's with Joe Colombo and the league. I said, "He owes me money." And that's the bullshit answer he gives me, that he ain't paying up. Fuck him and fuck that. "How much does he owe?" the guy asks. I tell him it's a couple of hundred, and he takes out the money and paid me. The next day, Shorty got in touch with me that Joe Colombo wanted to see me again. The boss himself. I go down to the real estate office on 56th Street where he stayed. He came out and said, "Sammy, you know that kid, the one you beat up the other night? He's working with the league." I said, "Joe, before you say anything or get mad, let me tell you what happened." I explained the whole circumstance about him borrowing the money, not paying, and then telling me to my face that he's not paying, not showing that he's with the league. Joe Colombo starts laughing and says, "Are you paid?" "Yes," he says. "Okay, this is the end of it." I said, "Of course, Joe. That kid just got me to a point where I lost it. Well, make sure it never happens again." And I said, "All right." Joe Colombo was a street guy. I heard from Shorty that after I left, Joe said that if I hadn't given the kid the beating I did, he, meaning me, wouldn't be one of us. A guy gives a fucking answer like that, he's supposed to get a beating. As far as I was concerned, that was the sort of thing that made Joe the boss, the reason you had to love the guy. To the consternation of his fellow Cosa Nostra bosses, Joe Colombo had formed the Italian American Civil Rights Defense League in 1969. The declared goal was to make Italian Americans proud of their heritage, to combat the gangster stereotype that all Italian Americans supposedly had to endure, and to force the media to stop using the buzzword mafia in stories about organized crime. One of the first tactics to gain attention was protest marches at the New York office of the FBI. Sammy the Bull was in the initial picket lines along with Shorty Spiro. I mean, Sammy recalls it was crazy. We were up there at the FBI in Manhattan around 69th Street and 3rd Avenue, and there wasn't more than 12 or 15 of us in the beginning. I remember it was raining, and the FBI was clicking cameras on all of us. That's all I needed. I thought, who gave a fuck about the mafia and the papers? It was just asking for trouble. I felt like a fool. So did Shorty, but the boss was the boss. To everyone's amazement, the movement caught on, culminating in a huge unity rally on Columbus Day, June 29th, 1970, at Columbus Circle, with well over 50,000 people cheering Joe Colombo. New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller accepted honorary membership in the league. Even Carlo Gambino, who had opposed the whole idea, went along. The Gambino family controlled the Brooklyn waterfront, and for the first time in history, a complete 24-hour work stoppage was ordered on the docks. so that longshoremen could attend the event. Within Cosa Nostra, however, concern mounted. The FBI, stunned at being targeted, had counterattacked. Throughout the city, surveillance was heightened, and suspected mob figures were hauled in the day and night for questioning on any pretext. The normal course of conducting mob business became almost all but impossible. The most visible sign that something was amiss occurred when it was learned that for a second giant rally the following year on June 28th, longshoremen were not getting the day off. And that day, as he stood at Columbus Circle observing the crowd assembled, Joe Colombo was shot 3 times in the head with an automatic pistol. I would say it would probably be a semi-automatic pistol. He was not killed. He had been reduced to a vegetative state, however, lingering on for 7 more years before dying. His assailant, a black man from New Jersey with a press card and carrying a movie camera, was shot dead on the spot by a Colombo bodyguards. At first, law enforcement as well as Cosa Nostra viewed the renegade Joey Gallo as the most likely mastermind of the plot. Recently released from prison, he was known to have cultivated relationships with a number of black inmates. Obviously, said Sammy. Obviously, said Sammy, somebody had to be behind it. This black guy was a nobody. We looked into him. He had a record, but he was a small time. He wasn't attached to any black organizations or anything like that. We heard that the gun was hidden in the movie camera. Could he have done that on his own? But the family decided that Joey Gallo was not responsible. He sent a message that he and his people were looking to kill Joe Colombo. They were at war, and if they caught him, they would have killed him. Joey Gallo said he'd love to claim the Columbus Circle job, that he did it, but he didn't. Junior Persico, Shorty, all the top guys in the family believed him. Some guys from the government had set it up and made it look like the gallows done it. But in reality, that didn't make any sense. To me, this day, it's a mystery. The only ones who really know are the ones that pulled it off. Or maybe that black guy was just some radical nut. It can happen. 2 years later, Joey Gallo, Crazy Joe, was killed while celebrating his 43rd birthday with his wife, daughter, and other relatives at Umberto's Clam House in Little Italy. But it wasn't because of the Columbus Circle shooting. Sammy said when Joey got out of jail, he had started rubbing elbows with all these writers and movie stars, theater people and whatnot. He was going to write a book or write books and make movies and do all that stuff. He got to be like a high society pet. And Joey Gallo had called him in to discuss this and other matters. And he refused to come. That's one of the most important rules in the Cosa Nostra. When the boss calls you in, you come in, or else. So Joe Colombo had put a contract out on him, and the new family administration finished it off, even though Joe Colombo was out of it by now. Being with the family was a two-way street for Sammy. He had the clout of the association, but he also was expected to obey orders, no questions asked. One day, with Shorty Spiro present, Carmine Persico summoned him, and Tommy Spiro, a Long Island distributor of commercial washing machines and dryers, had been discovered having an affair with his wife of the wife of one of the Persico's brothers. They were to give the distributor a beating. Persico wanted an ear of the distributor brought back to him. He was very explicit about the ear. He told Shorty, have Tommy do the driving and talking, let Sammy do the work. So off we go. We had a plan. We went in there and Tommy asked for this guy, the owner. And when he comes out, Tommy tells him he'd like to see some literature. He's thinking about opening up a laundromat. The guy took out some brochures. I had a blackjack in my back pocket. And when the guy leaned on the counter to show us the brochures, I hit him. I clocked him on the side of the head with the blackjack. I jumped over the counter and started beating him up. There are a half dozen workers out back. They heard the yelling and the banging around. They all come running out at us. One of them grabbed me by the shirt and I caught him in the face with the blackjack. Meanwhile, the other guy, the owner, was getting himself up. He had grabbed the edge of the counter with one hand. Now Junior, in contract, had told me that I was supposed to go in there and cut the guy's ear off. I had no intentions of doing that. I mean, come on. When I whacked this guy's hand with the blackjack, I knocked his little finger off. It came completely off. That finger went flying. It must have been the way he was holding onto the edge of the counter. We just about made it out of there, got in Tommy's car, and took off from the Long Island to Brooklyn. When we saw Shorty, I didn't get into the details. I told him, I'm sorry, I didn't get the ear, but I got the guy's finger. I seen it come off. I couldn't bring it back for Carmine. There were too many other guys and everything like that. Carmine did find out that the finger was gone. He said Shorty thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Carmine must have told Joe Colombo, because after that, instead of me waiting for the right moment to say hello to him, he would come over with a big smile and say, hey, Sammy, how you doing? Committing a murder, making your bones, was not a prerequisite for induction into Cosa Nostra, but more often than not, it would happen. Murder was the linchpin of Cosa Nostra, for control, for discipline, to achieve and maintain power. For main members and associates, it was an everyday accepted fact of life. The code that could trigger a hit was very clear. If someone broke the rules, he would be whacked. Murder was the means to bring some semblance of order to what otherwise would be chaos. In theory, a Cosa Nostra hit required a precise procedure. A case had to be made. It then had to be sanctioned by the family boss. A murder that had not been authorized invited immediate retribution, yet time after time transgressions occurred out of fear, jealousy, desperation, and greed. In early 1970, Shorty Spiro called Sammy in. Sammy had just turned 25. Are you ready to kill for the good of the family? Spiro asked. I got a piece of work for you. It's on record. The boss has given permission. Wow. That's page 46 of Peter Mass's Underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano's story of life in the Mafia. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yep, so we're going to end it. I'll be reading next at chapter 4, and it'll be about his hit that he's about to perform. And it states, in a hit, pulling the trigger is the easy part. I would say pulling the trigger is the easy part. It's the repercussions that is the difficult part. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my reading of Sammy the Bull's Underboss. It's a pretty good book. I know it looks like the first series I did there got pretty good viewing. I had turned the chat off and the remarks off the other day, but I thought I'd turn them back on today. If you want to jump in and chat. Anyway. I've still been working on some accounting lately and was able to mail some items off today. I'm still working on my divorce, of course. That'll be coming to fruition and whatnot. I was mentioning earlier that I have a new company that I'm a part of that's called Avail Cannabis. I've gone from Canna Connect to Avail Cannabis. These companies are paid for too if you're not if you don't know, but it's all paid for by Veterans Affairs too and Blue Cross. So yeah, I just got my first order from Avail. Smoking a little farm gas now. Thinking about Sammy the Bull. I read this story years ago. I remember I went to the library. I used to live in Victoria, and I used to go to the library a lot. And I've always enjoyed reading, and I've always enjoyed this kind of genre. Anyways, yeah, so I did read Sammy's book years ago, and I know I found now, like even just rereading Sammy's book, a lot of the stories are so familiar to me now, and maybe even to anybody who's watching this, that the stories are familiar because we hear Sammy speak them all the time now on his channel. So there, like about the one about his working in his father's dressmaking shop there, and it's like, yeah, he like clipped the threads off it, and I guess it's kind of like humiliating to be a gangster and work in a clothing shop or a ladies' dress shop. They'd rather be stealing the dresses and selling them. Anyways, that's my video for today. Persevering with a book to finish my goal of reading this book. Like any book, it is a goal, and it's a short-term goal that you can achieve yourself. If you struggle reading, some people do struggle reading. I don't think it's that easy either to read out loud. I know some people think this is boring or whatever. I don't give a shit. I'm going to keep doing it. because I like the knowledge that I'm learning, gaining from all these books. And then, ironically, they sure all tie into one another. Uh, Joey Gallo and all that is the Irishman too. Or they try to make it like that. I guess that's fake, but whatever. Anyways, that's my reading today of Sammy the Bull's Underboss by Peter Maas. I'm out. I read you 5 by 5, and I'll see you in my next video.